when I was in high school, I was learning how to be a poet. And the one thing that my teachers always taught me, I had two teachers, they were both my English teachers, and they always said, show, don't tell. And that was kind of the rule to being a poet or a writer, is that you were supposed to paint a picture with words instead of telling something. So I was thinking about that a few minutes ago. I was upstairs making a red sauce and scrubbing pots and pans and trying to bring some order to my household. And I've been wanting to do a podcast all day. Monday's kind of my free day to get things in order. And so I had this big idea that I was going to start the day and just do like 5 podcasts and get a bunch done. But that didn't happen because I think I'm kind of depressed and living in despair, and I try and work around that, but sometimes it just hits me, and I try and get out of that. I'm utterly terrified of being in despair, and it really bothers me. So I start doing things to try and get myself out of it, like being productive. Like yesterday, I have these birch trees, these white bark birch trees. There's 3 of them in my front yard, and they've gotten kind of big in the last 5 years or so, and they put off a lot of leaves. And I have a couple maples out there too, or one big maple. And so the leaves were just everywhere. And so yesterday I decided I was going to finally rake those up and cut back all of these beautiful jasmine bushes that had grown all over the fence. And they're probably going to warp my fence. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And I was out there all day. And that was helpful. So, I think that's what I learned when you're feeling kind of bad or miserable in some way about something that you don't know what to do. You don't know the solution to the problem. So the best thing to do is to continue to move forward and to do things, to move through it. So that's what I did. Today I thought, well, I can, I'd done some work and that I could start with a podcast, but I didn't do that. So I started writing. I used to have this practice where I write every morning, and I stopped doing it a couple weeks before the election. I started doing more social media writing, which is sort of meaningless, I think, but and not really, but sort of, writing comments and things like that, and it's kind of a dissipated way of contributing and got a little bit more frenetic. Anyway, but I had this practice where it comes from this book called The Artist's Way, and I recommend it to anyone out there who wants to be more grounded in their life or in a creative process. One of the practice that I've taken from that book is a thing called the morning pages, and so you sit down essentially and you just write out what's ever on your mind. You don't need to compose or anything like that. It's just a way of sort of draining what's in there, draining the swamp, I guess. And it helps. It helps to bring some clarity, and it helps to sort of aerate your mind, because when we go through our days and a lot can get packed inside of us, and we don't, it's not good if things are too packed in. We need to be able to breathe in our psyches. So the morning pages are helpful for that. And sometimes, something that you come up with will be helpful and orienting or organizing. So I did that. I built a fire. What else did I do? Oh, the day before the leaves, I cleaned my house all day because my nephew was coming. I think that was the day I actually did a podcast, but I haven't downloaded that. So, I've been busy, but my anxiety is up high, and I think there are many reasons for that. And I'm just thinking that I can't be the only one. So I always tell myself that. So this podcast is sort of like, I'm reaching out to God. I think when you reach out to the unknown, and it's an act of faith. To me, that's like reaching out to God. So this podcast is my prayer, I guess. Hopefully I'm speaking okay into this microphone. Sometimes I get paranoid that I'm doing it wrong. Anyway, it's my prayer. I think the reason why, one thing I came up with when I was making my red sauce, the reason for hi, I'm doing this.
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said you did a podcast.
No, I'm actually recording right now.
Okay. So now I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be on the internet.
Oh yeah, you'll be famous.
Okay. All right. I thought you said in your text that you recorded one.
No, I said I'm down here. Do you mind if I continue? So I'll just have to edit this part out.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, are you hungry?
Not yet. I can wait.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Okay. Okay. So, anyway, I was kind of trying to analyze what it was that was causing me to feel so full of despair more than I've had in a while. And I think I'm feeling like I'm in exile. And like I said, I don't think I'm alone in this. But I think, let me explain why I feel that way. Because I think when you're honest with yourself and you follow your heart, you're actually pretty likely to stray from the norm in your society. And I've never really wanted to be that kind of person, but with the situation, with what's happened in our culture, it's just turned out I was doing that. But it was always kind of my little secret that I was learning about all sorts of things, and I tried not to let it interfere with my interactions with people in my life. And I was able to kind of do that because my discoveries about the world, which I think I've kind of talked about in my last podcast, that led me to sort of shift my political orientation, or not really shift it, but to reconfirm it, or to confirm it at all from, I'm not a progressive, I'm not going that far over. I definitely am more of a classical liberal, which apparently is like being a conservative now. So it's very difficult when you suddenly, the category shifts and you are in a category that's a very dangerous category to be in. And so I think that's part of my exile. But like I said before, I kept it sort of to myself. And so I didn't have to feel like people were upset about what I was thinking or what I was, because I pretty much treat people with a great deal of respect. So they pretty much leave me alone and don't trouble me. And that's pretty much all you have to do, is treat everybody with kindness and respect, and they leave you alone most of the time. So it was pretty easy to fly under the radar. But I think since Trump was actually elected, it's been really fascinating, because suddenly the feelings that I have had, my private feelings, are now like on the world stage. Not that they're coming through me per se, but I'm associated and affiliated with that. And so my private self and life is somehow feels like it's exposed, and it's being critiqued and damned and blamed for everything. So by being associated with the Trump election, which I think that this process, or this journey I've been on, I was going on this before Trump came along. But like I've said before, I think Trump kind of, I think he rode an undercurrent that was already in the culture. And I think a lot of us came and were pulled into that current if we were paying attention, and for those kind of people. We came we were sort of like all the roads lead to the doghouse, and now we're all in the doghouse. But I don't mean that we sort of are in the doghouse. I mean, it's sad to me to see how much my private worries and concerns about the things that I was learning are now confirmed by how the public, the I guess the liberal public or the media or whatever, it's all liberal, the way they're all responding to this shift in cultural, in our philosophy, or an expression that seems to be a shift. And it's frightening. And it's also frightening, back to the exile part, to feel like I have most of my connections are very impersonal and online, and I don't have anybody in my town or even in my own household who I can really feel like I'm getting support from them. They're like on my team. So with my husband, for instance, he's been in his mental Canada for the last, well, since the election. So I guess it's been almost 4 weeks now, which is great. That works for him. He's just not consuming any media at all, and just working on other projects and just sort of ignoring it. But I haven't done that because I'm compelled to keep up with all of everything that's happening, because so much has been happening, because it's been such an unusual, I think, historical event that I can't help but pay attention. And there isn't anybody to talk to who's paying attention to it in that way, except for like my sister, which thank God I have her, and I can call her. But in the town, I'm just thinking, how in the heck can I find people who are experiencing what I am? And like I said, I think that's my task, is to try and find those people, and that's why I'm doing this. Maybe you guys have ideas on how to do that. I think I'm just not having a lot of luck with that. And it's also sad too that it's like starting over, really, when you have to meet new people. Like, now I need to meet conservatives, or how do I meet classical liberals? Or, it's honestly, it's just driving me crazy. I don't know. I don't even like the idea that I have to connect with people based upon politics. It's like I've always just been like a believer in each person as an individual, not like, oh, you're in this camp and you're in that camp. I like all people. And it bothers me that politics has so thoroughly colonized our psyches and our hearts and our private domains, that it's actually, that's like totalitarian, in my opinion. And that's partly why I was hoping that we wouldn't get Hillary in there, because I thought it would continue to be that way. I really feel that's a terrible, terrible thing that's happened to us, that we've had an assault on our private realm. It's quite worrisome. So there's that. I'm drinking water tonight, by the way, instead of wine. So I normally drink wine every single night. Definitely not an alcoholic, but I like to have a glass of wine every night. And I'm starting to feel like I just need to have more. I don't know. I thought maybe if I drink water, that the spirit of this experience would transform it into wine. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be so reliant upon the wine to give me the good feeling, but something inside of me would need to catalyze, it would kind of have to ferment something inside of me, so that an effervescence, a necessary, critical effervescence could bring my spirit back to life. So I'm just going to try that for a while and see if water is better than wine. Maybe I'll just have a kombucha. But so there's that. Exile. I think the trick to getting out of exile is to not give up, and to keep busy. Don't freak out. Like today, I thought maybe for a minute I felt like I was sort of freaking out not for very long. My heart was racing a little bit, and it hasn't done that in a while. But I just thought, what if I can't, make it out? And I think I need to figure out how to trust people, to trust people again. And something about what's happened I think it's corrupted my trust a little bit. And I don't know if it's just our post-virtue society. A good friend of mine actually wrote a piece about why she voted for Trump. It was published in a publication called The Federalist. She's a wonderful woman. I have never met her, but I've actually wrote to her a couple of years ago because she had written something that I thought was interesting about the transgender kind of phenomenon. And so we've been in contact since then, and we've spoken a few times. But anyway, she wrote a piece about why she ended up having to vote for Trump, even though I think she's an Eastern Orthodox Christian. Anyway, she's a very cool lady. And anyway, so she had to kind of grapple with the fact that she said this post-virtue realm that we're living in, and how she felt like voting for Trump would help her to come up for air, or our culture to come up for air. She felt like she was drowning. And so she couldn't think about what the quality of the air was so much as that she just needed air. And I thought that was wise, and actually it was kind of what I'd thought too, that, it's ironic to be guided or to be placing your country in the hands of somebody who puts out some kind of affects that seem at odds with some of my core values. But I don't know. I'm just believing that God is going to, and by God I mean the force of all of our minds and hearts willing Him to do the right thing. I think that maybe He's open to that. Like I said, I'm not going to say a specific God. I really do believe that our collective energy, or collective consciousness more than energy, really does, there's power in it. And that's why I believe in following the rules. And that's why I think, the rules that we know about, like, don't lie, don't hurt people, don't use people, don't objectify people. We're going to do those things sometimes, but I really believe that, I think somebody's outside the door. It might be my dog. Anyway, is that you? Or is that Oliver? Anyway, it's probably the dog. I really believe following these rules are so important. I don't think they can be discarded. I think that we pay a price if we do discard them. So that's why I feel that I need to follow them, and I haven't been following them because, well, in some sense I feel like I haven't, because I've been doubting, and I've had self-pity today, particularly when I was kind of feeling despair, and I was forgetting that I'm part of something larger, and that I'm not alone, and that there are a lot of people who are struggling right now. I gotta read something to you. Well, actually, I don't know if I'll read it to you, but I got this text this morning from my sister-in-law. She's a very devout Christian woman. She's an evangelical type, like she reads the Bible and talks to Jesus personally. And she, I have a very, a deep respect for her. And she took me out for my birthday, actually, a couple weeks ago for lunch. And I can't even go into why I have the deep respect I have for her, but I can a little bit. She's a complex person. I'm actually the one who introduced her to my brother because I met her when I was in high school. She was the young life leader at my school, and I was impressed with her. And I must have been 16 or 17. Young Life is a group for Christians that used to meet on campus on school grounds, but I'm sure they don't meet there anymore. But it's kind of a low key Christian group for kids to get together and sing songs and have fun and go camping and things like that. Anyway, so she was a leader, and she's about 5 years older than me, and we were friends. And then my brother was away. He was a missionary, actually, in the Middle East, and he's just my God. I mean, I loved him so much, and he's 7 years older than me, and we always were like two peas in a pod. Anyway, when I talked about him all the time to her, so probably. When he finally came back from being away, I didn't think he was ever going to come back. But he did, and they ended up getting together and getting married. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, so my sister-in-law, she's very devout, and I haven't, I left the church when I was, I mean, the evangelical church when I was like 20, 22. I actually came out of the closet, and I was, sort of exiled. My brother said he didn't want anything to do with me, actually, when I told him that I had lost my faith. And that was so devastating. I remember he was like, what fellowship does light have with darkness? And he said I think he said I was on the highway to hell or something. Anyway, so I basically had a major breakdown, because I admitted that to him when I was 23, I recall. And so I didn't see him for like 5 years after that. It was horrible. So that was the same time that I had gone off to go to the university. And so this is the woman who's married my brother, who I fell out of his good graces by losing my faith. And, it's taken me many, many years to come back around to having faith again. And even now, my faith is quite broad, and I've still been trying to figure it out. I definitely feel like I believe that following these certain rules that are kind of universal to most religions, to a lot of religions, I believe that those will align you with this Spirit of God as I describe it. I don't think that you can get away with violating those and still feel the presence of a deep connection with your fellow man. I just don't think you can. That's where I'm at, but I don't. So my sister-in-law, she, she's difficult. She can be difficult person. She's, sometimes over the years when I finally did get back around them, here and there, it's kind of hard to be. I basically told people in my family that I was an atheist, and because I thought things were very black and white, and I didn't know how else to go about it. So I was, I was never fully brought into the fold because of that. But then over the years, I just tried to ignore it and follow my heart. And because I came to realize I still was very deeply connected to my family, and I was always trying to find a way to kind of go either deeper and find something deeper that connected us besides, because I felt like it was the language that was getting between us, because I felt like I still held these similar beliefs and values, but I didn't know exactly how to express it. And also I knew I had them, but I wasn't really fully knowing that they were that important, as I really came to realize in the last, I'd say, 10 years. But so my sister-in-law, she still lives in the house that my father built with my brother. So they stayed there in that house and they cared for my mother. And, well, my sister-in-law did. And so I have, I'll always be devoted to her for, they stayed there and watched over my mom till she died. And that wasn't easy. So anyway, this is a long way of saying that this morning, I was feeling kind of a little bit sad, but then she sent me a text, and she doesn't send me very many texts, but she sent me this text, and this is what she said. She said, she writes very sweet, very childlike. She said, I had my first dream about you last night. It was a joyous spiritual dream. And I said, oh, I'm so glad. And then I said that made me cry. And then she said, why are you sad? Because of the dream? And I said, no. I'm so happy for your dream. It's a gift. So she says, I saw your street in front of your house. And then it turned into a stream. She said, you were sitting next to the stream, looking up at me, so sweet, and your face was aglow with the Holy Spirit. You smiled and expressed you smiled and expressed with your expression to come across the water and enjoy the water. She says, I stood near you, looking at the clear stream. You looked up at me, expressing with your body language to be closer to you and sit and enjoy the sight. I squatted next to you quickly as we looked at a school of minnows, baby salmon. We studied them for a few minutes. I was thinking about sitting next to you, and I saw something moving towards us in the water. I sprang up to see it clearly because the sun shone so shiny on the water. I didn't know what it was. I exclaimed, it's an angelfish. Isn't it beautiful? We marveled at it. It was coming towards us. I looked across the stream and saw 2 more angelfish coming. The first angelfish was with us, and the 3 angelfish stayed nearby. They kept watching us while we watched them. We giggled with delight as I sat next to you. And she says, I have been asking God for an interpretation. She wanted to know what I thought of the dream. She says, maybe you need more time to think about it, to get an understanding. All I know about this dream so far, she says, is that you and I were very close in our spirit, and you were leading me to be even closer. The Holy Spirit, God, and Jesus. The dream was leading me towards God. You were leading me towards God, even though I already know Him. Anyway, I know that's so strange. It's done. I'm done reading that. But so this is how my day started, with my sister-in-law sending me this image of this dream that she had with the street, turning to water and fish. And I don't know, it really touched my heart. I think I'm that open to being touched by God or by anyone who cares right now. Even though my sister-in-law can be a little weird sometimes. She's been through a lot. I think about 6 years ago, her youngest child, my niece, she got a brain tumor. She was only 5. And I got this text saying they were on the way to the hospital and that she had a brain tumor. Her oldest brother sent it to me, and so I got in my car and I rushed over to the hospital because it was near my house. It was in town, and I remember standing outside of the room, the emergency room, where my brother and my sister-in-law were sitting with Grace. And I was standing outside of the room, and I couldn't go in, but I saw them in there. And it was like this, they were in this world that could not be penetrated. So I just stood there, and I watched them for a long time with their child on the bed, sort of looking like she was very sick, and it was a shock. I went back outside, back out to the waiting room, and I talked to her older brother who was having a breakdown, and I talked to him on the phone. He was having a breakdown, not necessarily because his sister was sick, even though he was upset about that, but he was kind of having a breakdown in the way he has a breakdown. He's got some mental instability, and so I was kind of distracted with that. But then I ultimately went back, and I forced myself to go in the door. And I wasn't on super great terms with my brother and my sister-in-law then. I mean, I felt compelled to be there because I'm so close to my brother. We've just been through so much, and I feel like we're one. But at that time, I felt more afraid of my sister-in-law. But I felt like I needed to be there because, we're family. And it wasn't easy. I was sort of glued to I tried to be helpful to them, and I stayed with them for the next 9 days. They were at the hospital, and then they went home. They took Grace home, and she died. It was like 3 weeks from start to finish from that day, and she was gone. It was very, very catastrophic. Anyway, but during those days at the hospital, I didn't have any words. My brother and his wife were surrounded by a lot of the church people because they just were descended upon by all the people from their church and different people, and they were always reading from the Bible and saying scriptures and singing and praying. And I was the sister who wanted to be there, the atheist, and I didn't have those words to give, and I didn't feel like I could say them. I just didn't have them. So I felt like I didn't have anything to give them but my presence. So I just was at the hospital the whole time, as much as I could be. I think a lot of people are inclined to stay away, kind of like my husband's style is to go to Canada right now, and I want to be really aware of what's going on. I wanted to be at the hospital. I felt more comforted to be in the midst of what was happening as opposed to trying to get away from it. It's just different styles, I guess. Anyway, so when I was with my sister-in-law in there, I remember every time the doctor would come in, they were just on pins and needles. What was the doctor going to say? These doctors are looking at this child. It doesn't happen very often that a child, gets a brain tumor and is going to go down. It's going down fast. It's just not easy for anybody. And I felt like the doctors were just hating coming in the room and having to deliver this news. And of course, I wrapped my arms around my sister-in-law. she's sort of a very frail boned person. She's tall and lanky, like my brother. And she's not as sturdy as I am. But anyway, I just wrapped my arms around her. And whenever the doctor would come in, I felt like she was going to explode. And I had to keep her bound up. And that was what I did. And then when I would try and take my arms off of her, she wouldn't want me to stop doing that. She wanted me to literally keep her in the tightest embrace. And I remember my brother was sitting across the room, and something can happen when there's a very difficult thing that you experience like that, and it can make it so you can't be close to the people that you have been close to before. And anyway, she told me about that later, that, there was a distance between them. And sometimes people say that if you lose a child, you're going to, it'll ruin your marriage. And that's pretty common. But they made it through. After a couple of years, she said their relationship rebounded. But they're very devout. So anyway, but I kept going along feeling sort of like an outsider because I didn't have the God language to comfort them. And but just like I said, just kind of stayed the course. And I never knew if it helped, But as the years went by, the church people that, or even didn't take years, but the church people that had been there, that I felt sort of like maybe I was even jealous of them that I couldn't be there to help in the same way they could. They all kind of seemed to go away, like they weren't part of that church anymore. It was more ephemeral than it looked to me, those connections. Anyway, I had a conversation with my sister-in-law in a garden, a Japanese garden. It was an epic conversation. It was about this last summer. And I don't know what it was, but we've been having a lot of problems with our family because since my mom died, it's a big deal about what to do with the house. And, it's causing a lot of friction, the house that they live in, Tony, my sister-in-law and my brother. And it hasn't been pretty, and there's some serious breakdown in our family for the first time. Anyway, but I don't know why I just decided to call my sister-in-law this one morning, and I asked her if she would meet me at this garden that I really enjoy. I had my wedding pictures taken there. It's this old Japanese garden. It's gotten to be much bigger and more beautiful since the city took it over a little bit ago. Anyway, so I met her, and we were walking around, and I just thought I just wanted to talk about the trees with her. And she's very childlike, and she enjoys being in nature, and I just really wanted to be with her and just appreciate her for all that she's done. And anyway, we went up to the highest part of the garden where you can look out over everything. And it was this little area that used to have maybe like a little shrine up there at the top, but I think that was gone. There was just a bench, and I brought some tea, and we were drinking the tea and eating some nuts, some almonds that I'd packed. We were in this garden for hours. Anyway, she wanted to know why I had called her and why I wanted to go to the garden. And I told her that I just wanted to thank her for what she'd done, for living at the house that my father built, and my brother, they wanted to stay there, and for caring for my mom, and how I always felt so bad that I wasn't the one caring for my mom, and that I had run away, and I felt like it always just crippled me that she had been the one in charge, and I felt like I couldn't go there anymore, and it's too much to get into about my mom, but anyway, she told me that she felt that she wanted me to be free, and that was her highest prayer, that I would be free. And it was a beautiful conversation. I'm not going into all the detail right now, but that she had wanted that, and that she hadn't always wanted to be there, but she was following the will of God. And I felt like she released me somehow of my guilt that day. And I remember crying and, about that. Anyway, the thing about her and her daughter who passed away, my niece, she said, when we were at the hospital, I'll never forget, you were the person who was always there for me. And I said, well, I always felt like I didn't have much to give you because you had so many other people around from your church. And she said, no, I'll never forget your arms around me. And, that's what she remembered. She said of all the people, that's what she remembered. And it's sort of funny because, she tells me that like 5 years later, that's what meant the most to her, and that's what stayed in her mind when she thought about her time in the hospital. And wow, it really taught me a lesson that you don't know, what people are getting from you. You might think that you're useless and powerless, but your presence, if you follow your heart, even if you don't have the right words, that can be so much more powerful, So that was a really cool experience. I had a lot of sorrow about my niece's passing for years, because that happened in 2010. And the funny thing was, that's when I started my writing for the blogs. I just had to write about just everything. It was just gushing out of me. And I realized that one time I was crying so hard, thinking about how sad I was that my brother and my sister-in-law and their children, they have 5 other children. I just was tormented that they would have to live with this sorrow of this rupture and this loss of their precious child. I mean, I hated thinking about it, and it would just burn through me that they had to have that pain in their life, and I didn't know how they were going to survive it. And I remember I had this revelation that when you're crying and you're losing your breath, and I remember thinking, my breath is going out to my niece. It's going out to her. And then when I was done crying, I felt like her breath was coming back to me. And I thought, she has such a full spirit, and she didn't get to live a whole life. And I thought, what if these little spirits, that go too soon, maybe they're meant to give spirits that are kind of limping along a new life, And I thought, maybe my life, with all of that wrenching sorrow from that experience, maybe my life was being reborn because of this. Because I thought everything seemed so precious to me after she died. I couldn't take life for granted. I don't think I had been necessarily taking life for granted, but you can fall into that. And I just thought, I'm just going to live my life for her so that her death won't be in vain. So anyway, I told that to my sister-in-law when she took me out a couple weeks ago. I didn't tell her that day when we were talking about my mom and everything. But I said, I told her that her daughter had done that, and that was her prayer. She said, they spoke in the godly language around their house a lot, and I hope this podcast doesn't turn people away, but I'm just kind of going for this. I'm talking using this word in this spiritual sense of how we are so connected to each other, and that to me is a spiritual thing because it's not something you can quantify, and it is something that you experience by faith and openness, and to me it's not a problem. It's just what it is. Anyway, I feel like I didn't think that I'd ever be able to tell my sister-in-law all that had happened to me because of her daughter's death. I thought that would just be my private experience, But there we were, sitting in the Mongolian grill, eating our stir-fried vegetables, talking about kind of being reborn through pain and suffering. So I thought it was pretty special that she sent me the text this morning. And I think I'm right about this water wine thing. I feel really good now. I feel like I drank 2 glasses of wine, and all I've had is maybe a half a cup of water. So maybe if I just do a podcast every night, I won't need to drink wine. Because this has been a prayer. This is a prayer. And I hope that I can continue to pray this way without ceasing. I think that we're not alone. We really aren't. Sometimes we can feel like we are, we can feel so detached, and I have that. So I'm just showing you. I already feel better now. And that's really great. So I better go wash my face, and I'm going to go upstairs, say hi to my husband, and